Politics enter Beijing's Winter Games. Despite the rule keeping politics out of sports, host city Beijing opts to repeat its One China policy during an Olympic panel. Summer 2008 versus winter 2022. Tibet takes a radically different response to Beijing hosting the Olympics. Some blame it on generational change under the Communist Party. A turning point for Japan's relations with its communist neighbors. The country may soon expand its self-defense-only policy to include striking enemy military bases. And for those watching our full episode, Hong Kong reports 60 times more COVID-19 infections this month than last. Despite the city's zero cases policy, some patients are getting pushed out of overcrowded hospitals. And the NBA's most outspoken player on human rights abuses is in the spotlight. That's after he was traded to another team but released the same day. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Before we turn to today's news, a reminder about our recent announcement. We are now sharing a shortened version of our program on YouTube. Full episodes can be watched on NTD's partner platform Epoch TV. To sign up, please click the link below. We'll still broadcast Monday to Saturday at 9:30 p.m. New York time, both on YouTube and Epoch TV. After each episode's premiere, all of our full-length programming becomes available on our website. Find us at www.ntd.com/ChinaInFocus. Outside those platforms, viewers can also catch our broadcasts live on TV. Visit ntd.com/TV and enter your zip code to find out where to watch in your city. We're making the change for a few reasons. YouTube demonetized us a year ago and at the same time stopped recommending our episodes to users. Recently, they seem to have resumed part of that recommendation function, but on a limited basis. What's more, we get constant reports from viewers saying they were quietly and repeatedly unsubscribed from our channel without reason or notice from YouTube. Other viewers say they never get notifications for our new episodes. We aim to provide you first-hand China news that you can't find elsewhere, and this change will help push that purpose even further. Thank you for your continued support. First on today's top stories, an update on the Beijing Olympics. Politics took the stage at the Winter Games on Thursday. That's when the International Olympic Committee, or IOC, was asked about Taiwan's presence in the closing ceremony. A Beijing official cut in.
What I want to point out is there is only one China in the world, and Taiwan is an inalienable part of China.
Quickly adding,
we have always opposed behavior that uses the Winter Olympics to politicize sports.
The IOC has been trying to keep politics out of the Games. It bans athletes from making political statements on the medals podium and in competitions. The Chinese Communist Party sees Taiwan as part of China, and it has been threatening to take control of it by force. That's despite Taiwan having its own democratically elected leaders and constitution. A reporter later pressed the IOC on forced labor issues in Xinjiang.
And are you confident that your uniforms don't include products made by Uyghur forced labor?
None of our products, none of the production took place in Xinjiang, nor any of the input or raw materials come from that region.
The Beijing official again chimed in, saying she felt obliged to make a quick comment.
I think the so-called issue of forced labor in Xinjiang is a lie, fabricated by some forces with ulterior motives.
U.S. President Biden signed a bill last year banning imports from Xinjiang unless businesses can prove that they are not made by forced labor. Tibet has stayed relatively quiet on the protest front since the start of the Beijing Winter Games. But the relative silence marks a major change from the last time Beijing hosted the Olympics back in the summer of 2008. After more than a decade, we look at how sentiment in Tibet has changed under the Chinese Communist Party's iron fist.
Ahead of the Beijing Summer Olympics 14 years ago, Tibet was in revolt. Deadly clashes between Tibetans and security forces made global headlines. And for weeks, monks and herders battled bullets and batons. But today, Tibet has fallen silent, even as the Olympic Games come to Beijing for a second time. The reason is that in many ways, Beijing's plan to tame Tibet is working. Older Tibetans have resigned themselves to being part of China after decades of struggle. Younger Tibetans are split. Some still secretly long for independence, while others call themselves proud Chinese citizens. Abroad, activists find their calls falling on deaf ears as China uses its economic might to punish countries and companies that voice support for Tibet. Ever since China's army marched into Tibet in the 50s, Beijing's harsh controls have prompted Tibetans to demand autonomy, causing severe crackdowns. As the first Beijing Olympics approached in 2008, the cycles of protest and clampdown in Tibet accelerated, leaving over a dozen killed by protesters, and state security forces opened fire on demonstrators. Among the protesters was Tsewang Dondup, a Tibetan who was shot by officers after rushing forward to aid protesting monks and nuns. He lives in Canada after he fled Tibet in 2012.
I took part in those protests because I felt that the struggles that my family, my parents struggle, and the struggle that I was facing shouldn't be passed on to my children.
After the 2008 Olympics, Beijing launched a sweeping campaign, looking to control the hearts and minds of Tibetans. Billions of dollars have been poured into airports, highways, schools, and other construction in Tibet. Electricity and subsidized health care have come to vast swaths of the region. But with jobs and investment come stepped-up security and surveillance, aimed squarely at Tibetans.
We're in an era of China having ethnic profiling as its basic principle of policing and of management of society.
Robert Barnett, a Tibet expert in London, says phones and the internet have become tools to monitor and control. Those who speak up about the Dalai Lama, Tibet's spiritual leader in exile, find their movements restricted. Some are placed under house arrest or imprisoned. In Drago County, authorities demolished a 100-foot-tall Buddha statue last year and forced residents to watch. Though Tibetan dissidents still smuggle news and images out of the region to fight back the communist regime, though doing so comes at great personal risk.
I can say there is not a single Tibetan in Tibet who wants to live under the Chinese state.
Most Tibetan children are now sent to boarding schools, studying mainly in Chinese. The teaching of Tibetan, their mother language, has been sharply curtailed. But memories of the Chinese Communist Party's suppression and the struggle Tibetans have faced in keeping their cultural identity have begun to recede into the past. Many young urban Tibetans have adopted Han Chinese manners and attitudes. In the Tibetan quarter of Chengdu City, where tens of thousands of Tibetans live, Chinese Communist Party officers armed with pikes and batons stand sentry, while police lights flash red and blue. Checkpoints and cameras line the roads, but residents seem to pay little heed. Many young Tibetans are forging a new bicultural identity without challenging Beijing's rule.
I'm a true Tibetan. I'm very proud to be Tibetan, and I love my ethnic culture. But at the same time, I'm a true Chinese. There's no conflict between these things.
This Tibetan dance teacher lives in Chengdu. She speaks flawless Mandarin and calls herself a devout Buddhist. She's one of many young people who have found a way to live under Beijing's watchful gaze without challenging the communist regime's rule.
A turning point for Japan's national security policy. Striking enemy military bases on foreign soil could be seen as self-defense, according to Japan's defense minister. He made the point Wednesday during a parliamentary hearing, noting that the tactic could fall under the country's strict post-World War II self-defense policy. But there's a precondition. The strategy could only be used as necessary to protect Japan from a hypothetical missile attack. Japan's defense minister did not single out a specific threat. But his statement comes as North Korea increases efforts to launch missile tests this year. Japan's prime minister said last month that his country isn't looking to destroy a nation through the possible airstrikes. He also gave assurances that the action would not violate the country's pacifist constitution. The U.S. imposed the pacifist constitution on Japan back in the 1940s, when Japan lost the Second World War. It aimed to limit Japan's military moves to self-defense. That's to make sure the country would not launch another war. In light of that policy, Japan has been seeking to boost its defenses for some time, as it faces growing threats from its communist neighbors, North Korea and China. Speaking of Japan-China relations, a Japanese man is detained in China's largest metropolis, Shanghai. Japan's foreign ministry announced the news Thursday. The reason for the man's arrest is unclear. Japanese officials have asked Beijing to grant them permission to meet with him. According to Japanese outlet Kyodo News, 16 Japanese nationals have been detained in China over the last 7 years. 9 of them were sentenced to prison for up to 15 years on various charges, including espionage. Nationals of other countries have also been held in China. 2 of the most high-profile cases garnered international attention, known as the 2 Michaels from Canada. Businessman Michael Spavor and former diplomat Michael Kovrig were detained in China for over 1,000 days. In a move widely seen as retaliation, both were arrested in 2018, just days after Canada apprehended Chinese citizen Meng Wanzhou. Meng served as the chief financial officer of Chinese tech giant Huawei, and Canadian officials took her in on a warrant from the U.S. She was charged with misleading global banking company HSBC on Huawei's dealings with Iran, which could have led the bank to breach U.S. sanctions. China let the 2 Canadians go hours after Meng's release last year. Beijing denies the arrests came in retaliation. And that's all for today on YouTube. And just a reminder for those tuning in late, we are now sharing a shortened version of our program on YouTube. Full episodes can be watched on NTD's partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, please click the link down below. After each episode's premiere, all of our full-length programming becomes available on our website. Find us at www.ntd.com/ChinaInFocus, or find out where to watch on cable in your city at ntd.com/TV. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.